65% of GDP is consumption.
Between them, there is 10,000 crore of AUM sitting here. There is a genuine demand slowdown which is happening.
The problem was EMI had gone up. My salary is not going up. मेरा खर्चा बढ़ रहा है because of inflation. मेरा EMI बढ़ गया है.
There has been a time where someone will say consumption sector cheap है, खरीद लो.
If you look at the data, actually rural real wage income growth has turned positive for the last 3 months.
1 lakh crore is a large sum of money.
Yeah.
And it is almost like direct cash transfer.
Only 1/3 of rural income is directly dependent on agri. Right?
What makes you believe that, let's say, the next 12, 18, 24 months will be different, where stock prices will do well?
तो लार्जेस्ट FMCG कंपनी ने अच्छा नहीं किया तो लोगों को लगता है कि FMCG स्टॉक अच्छा नहीं किया, बट
अपना टेम्परेचर बताओ.
Keyword is business model, right? So there will be companies which are sustainable, which are profitable.
Hi friends, welcome to another episode of our podcast series. So today I have two of my old friends in our office at Mumbai. Chanchal, who's a senior fund manager at Aditya Birla AMC, and Hitesh, who is a senior fund manager at Axis AMC. So thanks guys, both of you. And the commonality between the two is both are consumption and consumer sector focused fund managers, right? So we were trying to get their time for some time after the budget came and there was this big stimulus of almost 1 lakh crore. We thought कि immediately consumption sector के experts को तो बुलाना ही चाहिए, but sir busy थे दोनों, so उन्होंने आया. So finally we are here, and good that we are meeting after some pause. We can the initial effects of the announcement are out of the way, and there's so much more which has happened in the
last month.
Yeah, so we can discuss a lot more. So thanks again, both of you. So little bit maybe, what we thought, each AMC has some kind of a dominant philosophy in which they manage money. So if you can maybe spend a few minutes, each of you, talking about how at an AMC level you look at things, then specifically to your funds we will talk. And by the way, between them there is 10,000 crore of AUM sitting here. So yeah. Please, Hitesh, maybe you can start.
Yeah, I think from our AMC perspective, again, we are focused on quality and growth as a philosophy, and we have been focusing on that for quite a while now. Quality we defined as good business models which grow market share with a sustainable profitable basis, right? And good return ratios which are evident by that. And also good corporate governance is very, very essential for selecting a particular business model for us. And in our sort of framework, we look at two things: right to grow and room to grow. So room to grow is obviously, in simple terms, is the total addressable market. Is it growing, and has the company a low share in that? And the second is the right to grow. The company has a moat or anything which differentiates itself from the peers as such. So that's the two sort of philosophies, and we have a bottom-up approach in selecting companies there. And obviously, we take a long-term view of such companies and invest accordingly and hope to make returns there. Yeah.
So I'll come specifically to your personal philosophy, but maybe Chanchal, you can throw. So, and I must add, Chanchal and I have been colleagues for almost like 5 years when I was at Birla AMC, and we were cubicle buddies. So he was just sitting next to me.
Yeah,
so,
those were good times.
Fond memories. Yeah, so Chanchal, I don't know from then now, has there been some big shift in philosophy?
No, thanks, Rohit. So the idea always has been to give a higher risk-adjusted return, and as a fund house, we have a blend of both value and growth. So because we manage so many funds between all of us, we have a basket of being the oldest mutual fund house. We have a basket of mutual funds, and all different fund managers have their different styles. So it's a blend of both value and growth, and we try to give higher risk-adjusted return. A lot of things changed during the journey of fund house, and we were there for 5 years, and then the journey started. But what we believe a lot in process. We believe if we follow the process in a great way, process will always lead to higher return. So we emphasize a lot on what's the process, how we are following the process, and within identifying stocks, we have a BMV approach, which we'll talk about. We give a lot of emphasis on business. What's the business? What is the business right to win? Who are the top companies in those business? Why this company can succeed? So first, a lot of attention on business, then go to management. Because we believe a good manager can pivot the business in the right direction.
Yeah.
So give a good emphasis to management after analyzing the business management, and then the valuation. Valuation is very important if I'm having a value style. So idea is most of our funds should have a blend of this. We follow the process. We have a bottom up approach, identify stock, and now with Haris coming in from Kotak, we have also defined that we'll take a bigger and bolder bets. So we have identified that top 75 stocks normally of any fund house is 80% of their portfolio. So whenever and this would be ex Nifty, we'll try and identify big names which we like a business and take a big bet as a fund house. So that's the direction we are moving on, and that's the thing which I tell we have evolved as a fund house to take this bigger, bolder bets going forward.
Okay. So makes sense. I think this is something new which I did not know about. So thanks both of you. Now let's come. So we'll have 2 or 3 tracks.
Yeah.
The first track, which is very relevant, especially in light of the recent downturn in the markets or volatility in the markets, is everyone is talking about this demand slowdown, demand downturn. And who better than both of you, because you are tracking consumer sector, you are betting on stocks in the consumer sector the most. So maybe Hitesh, if you want to go first, what changed suddenly in the 6 months that September, October, everything was looking so rosy that nothing can go wrong, and now it is looking like nothing can go right. So what has changed in this last 6 months that there is suddenly this sentiment of bearishness which has enveloped us?
I think the primary reasons were earnings disappointments, right? They started somewhere in the September, October timeframe, and all of us realize in our hindsight that valuations were punchy, right? We have seen markets going up and up for many years. So, if just an interesting fact, till CY24 and the calendar year, markets have been giving positive returns for 8 consecutive years now. It's the longest running streak for Nifty, right? So there has to be some sort of adjustment there, right? And
sorry, just point. I think recently, last February, when last consecutive 8 months Nifty has given negative return. So what a coincidence!
Yeah. So I think some adjustment is valid. And the last big run was not even the GFC. It was much before that, during the 90s, right? So that way, I think there was something due. We had a series of earnings disappointments starting September, October timeframe. And obviously, we had come off a good cyclical lows post-COVID. That high base had to be lapped up. And obviously, we have seen earnings coming off, valuations which were punchy then following that. And then post that, we had a lot of geopolitical events globally as well. We have seen what's happening in US, a lot of talk on tariff wars, etc. So I think that has spooked investors as such. We have seen foreign outflows as well, right? We've seen a good amount of foreign outflows last year as well, on the second half of the financial year and continuing this year. So I think that has sort of spooked the markets or caused high volatility in the markets. And yeah, I think that were the key reasons. If we go deep down as to why earnings disappointment came, I talked about
I want Chanchal to take. So I understand earnings disappointment, and we can maybe talk a little bit about why earnings disappointment. But more than that, I want to talk about genuine demand slowdown. So do you see there is a genuine demand slowdown which is happening, or the market was expecting too much maybe in June, July, August of last year? Actual demand slowdown is not that much.
Sure.
So what is your view? Is it slowdown versus very lofty expectations, or genuinely there is a demand problem in the economy as well?
Sure, good point, good question. The point is, if I were to divide market into consumption and investment, there are two different buckets. If I talk about consumption, what happened post-COVID? There was a huge amount of pent-up consumption, and people were consuming left, right, and center. Specifically, people in urban, people who had earned salaried income, people they were on their normal salary. And coming out of COVID, we have seen huge consumption. So there was a big pent-up consumption. And if you dial back, there was an interest rate hike and also huge amount of real estate consumption. A lot of houses got sold. So people leveraged, the interest rate went up, and people did whatever they want to consume. If I had to paint the house, I already painted my house. If I had to buy a car, I bought a car. If I had to buy a house, I was
taking a holiday.
Yeah.
If I had to take a holiday, I was taking a holiday. But this culture of holiday taking is a new culture which still continues. So I'll come to that services as a part of the consumption spend later. But if I talk about that spend had gone and the EMI had gone up and salary growth had not happened in the last 4-5 years as much as the inflation had gone up. So the problem was of the inflation, the problem was pent up consumption had already happened, the problem was EMI had gone up. So my salary is not going up, मेरा खर्चा बढ़ रहा है because of inflation, मेरा EMI बढ़ गया है, so I'll curtail some consumption. So some amount of curtailment of consumption happened in the urban and rural. If I see, the MSP was not going up as much as in the last decade, and the inflation was hitting them also. So both put together, actually there was a consumption slowdown.
Is it true today also?
And what happened after that?
I think Chanchal is right there. I think the points he highlighted, like EMIs, inflation, and another point I'd like to highlight is credit growth was also slowing down, right? So some of the personal loans, etc., have been slowing down. That also impacted.
So actually, it's a very interesting point because loan growth, if you see the decline in loan growth is more recent, maybe the last
1 year or so.
Yeah. And before that, it was growing like how.
Yeah.
And this was never kind of, the correlation was never that how much of the consumption growth is actually driven by this unsecured personal loan growth.
Yeah.
Now, if unsecured loan growth has kind of gone down due to whatever reasons, consumption had to follow. There was some,
Some correlation.
Yeah, there is always, see, liquidity tightening is not bad for consumption, right? Yeah. Obviously, so the basic fact is that. And there's always some correlation. Chanchal also talked about rural, right? MSPs and etc. I think we have seen that K-shaped recovery everyone talks about and writes about. I think that continued. And why so? Because obviously MSME sector post-COVID took some time to come back, right? And we have seen consumption as a challenge because we have seen, consumption, if you just take every sector keeps on challenge in some of the other time frame. This time around, I think a couple of sector more sort of came through that and it's widened, right?
In India, especially, the problem with consumption sector always has been that valuations have always been very lofty. I mean, it makes your job tougher. I just have to comment, you have to pick stocks, but never there has been a time where someone will say consumption sector cheap hai, khareed lo. It's just that it is super expensive or it is relatively expensive. So there are the only two states of matter which are there. 1 lakh crore is a large sum of money.
Yeah.
And it is almost like direct cash transfer, right? It is no different from Ladli Behna because, everyone who is in that, even I am benefiting, so why I shouldn't say,
All of us
are benefiting in this room.
Now, there are two thoughts, two school of thoughts which are there and I have my personal school of thought. I will mention that also. One is, all of this is directly going to go into consumption. So come April of next year, you should assume 12,000 crore का consumption तो बढ़ने ही वाला है.
12,000 crore?
1 लाख करोड़ साल का, तो महीने का
12,000
12,000 crore, 13,000 crore, whatever. नहीं, ज़्यादा हो गया.
नहीं, it is 8,000.
8,000 crore. 8,000
roughly.
पर 8,000 में leverage करेंगे तो.
हाँ, so that was my philosophy. एक तो ये है. दूसरा है कि as you were saying that people already have large EMIs, etc., so they might actually save or delever. The third philosophy which I have, which you just mentioned, is that this 1 lakh crore is actually pure equity in my hands. Let's say if I wanted to buy a home, I have a decent job, I can afford, someone will give me a home loan, I can afford the EMI, but I did not have that down payment. Now this 1 lakh crore is down payment for my home, for my car, for my bike, for my holiday. I can actually on this 1 lakh crore lever it up 10 times and make this a consumption boom of 10 lakh crore. So these are like 2-3 different school of thoughts. What I wanted to hear, maybe Chanchal, you can go first, is how do you see how much of this is a headline impact? How much of it will actually translate into some consumption demand revival?
Sure. I mean, since you're focusing on near and how, this 1 lakh crore mostly will go to salaried people and double income no kid. India की average age कितनी 28 साल है, तो and जो जनता है मोस्टली 28 से 35 साल में ज़्यादा 9,000 रुपये महीने का बढ़ जाए, 8-9,000 रुपये बहुत होता है उनके लिए. Where will they consume? What will they consume? The first thing which पैसा ज़्यादा आना चालू हो तो सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे लोग, जाके खाने पीने में खर्चा करेंगे, बेटर रेस्टोरेंट्स. एंड यू नो लास्ट टाइम when I was talking, इंटरप्टेड के होटल्स में खर्चा चले जा रहा है. सर्विसेज एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ कंजम्पशन स्पेंड बास्केट इज गोइंग टू ग्रो अप इन इंडिया. नॉर्मली क्या होता है, एज पर कैपिटा इनकम इम्प्रूव्स, सर्विसेज में कंजम्पशन ज़्यादा होता है. आप अच्छे होटल में जाओगे, अच्छे, तो इंडिया में नंबर ऑफ होटल रूम्स आर वेरी लो. सो दिस इज अ ट्रेंड विच विल कंटिन्यू. So that services में spend बढ़ेगा, तो that is good QSR, good restaurant chains will, then the other spend you will do in buying better clothes, buying better footwear, buying better watches, better mobile or better, so that's the second bucket. Then better consumer durable. आपके घर में AC नहीं है तो अभी AC, refrigerator, washing machine, तो ज़्यादा immediate and how. जो घर लेना है वो डिसीजन आई थिंक मुझे नहीं लगता 1 लाख रुपए से इतना बड़ा डेंट होगा. मोस्टली जो पैसा आएगा, पीपल नो दैट कि पैसा एडिशनल आ रहा है, कहाँ खर्चा करेंगे. मेरे हिसाब से ट्रैवल, कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल, ऑटो में भी. कार लेना है तो कार पोस्टपोन कर रहे थे, डिंक है, डबल इनकम, नो किड है, हम बोलेंगे कार ले लेना है. दिस आर द प्लेसेस which will see big amount of and leverage होगा, because if I'm buying a car I'm leveraging, if I'm buying a bike I'm leveraging, if I'm buying consumer durable also I'm leveraging. So leverage होगा. 1 लाख करोड़ से शायद 3 लाख करोड़ का खर्चा होगा, और वो होने वाला ही है. एंड क्या है, इंडिया की एवरेज 28 साल है. अब 35-40 साल तो आप 8,000 दोगे तो अलग खर्चा करेगा, 28-29 साल वाले को दोगे तो आप अलग खर्चा करेगा. एंड कुछ अमाउंट म्यूचुअल फंड में भी जाएगा. पीपल विल हैव मोर अमाउंट ऑफ SIP विथ यू and invest in
With
stocks also. And SIP with us, yeah. Eventually हम हमारे में डालेंगे ना.
So, okay, so I concur. So I don't have a different point of view. So I won't. Slightly on a different type.
Yeah.
That maybe this helps little bit on. Largely, I feel urban consumption. How will rural consumption revive?
I think, see, the first steps, like the income transfer scheme, a lot of it is also going to the rural economy, right? And if you look at the data, actually rural real wage income growth has turned positive for the last 3 months, right? So there is some, after many years of being slightly muted, it's turned positive. I think we have had this income transfer scheme. Second, we had a spate of good monsoons, slightly better food prices, food and crop prices. So I think, and input prices have come off, right? So input prices, which post the Ukraine war had gone up massively, have come off largely, right? So there is some better sort of.
So delta on both sides.
Yeah, there is delta on both sides, income and as well as cost. आपके farm expenses will go down. And you know, and also a lot of rural income also depends on the urban sort of construction infrastructure, people who travel from a village to a city to work, right? Yeah. So if more job opportunities are created in a urban, that sort of income goes
that
back to the
of money happens from
export of, so yeah, so not, it may not be linked to the you know, the tax cuts. But general buoyancy, as you know, it will be gradual. General buoyancy आएगा, there will be more people getting hired at the lower levels.
So good point. Urban के buoyancy rural में जाती है, but 2-3 और point. So palm oil में we have a 20% import duty now. So all the oil seeds which are made in India, सब oil seeds के भाव बढ़ गए. If you see palm oil, people are expecting import duty to come down. Import duty has not come down. So this will the major beneficiary which will flow on to rural. Plus last year monsoon अच्छा था, hopefully monsoon अच्छा इस साल भी होगा. We complete on this. क्या है कि जो palm oil based oil seeds है ना, इससे बहुत बड़ा income growth आएगा. Plus क्या है, मिल्क के भाव भी बढ़ने चालू हो गए. मिल्क एंड ये बड़ा income growth आ सकता है. And the other thing which प्रयागराज जाके आया मैं, 2 लाख करोड़ यूपी में खर्चा हुआ.
I went.
Amazing
experience. Oh, mind-blowing.
I can't believe 1/3 of Indian would have taken a dip probably. But
so yeah, but I haven't been.
You also went?
No, I didn't go.
2 लाख करोड़ वहाँ खर्चा हुआ. तो अभी पेपर में आर्टिकल पढ़ा था, कोई आदमी ने बोट में बोटिंग करते हुए 60 करोड़ या 35 करोड़ कमाया, जो भी है. So the point is that people in UP at least has made humongous money. 2 लाख करोड़ ये तो stimulus rural में गया ना. So 1 लाख करोड़ वहाँ, 2 लाख करोड़ यार.
25 crore population almost
in UP. Yeah.
That means that ये 3 लाख करोड़ तो हो गया. इस पे leverage करके consumption इंडिया में होने ही वाला है. That's the reason consumption story is just.
So that's why the stocks never become cheap. No, so you mentioned rural. So Hitesh, I have a which is not linked to anything. It's a perennial question. How much of this monsoon watching actually does it even matter? Every year IMD का estimate आ गया, उसकी वजह से monsoon will be so much, rural demand will be higher or lower. Does it even matter? Yeah, it's just that one more news point which we cover, which is of no use.
See, only 1/3 of rural income is directly dependent on agri, right? So rest 1/3 is, as Chanchal spoke about, is milk, husbandry, all this poultry and all those, you know, horticulture is growing in India very fast, and then 1/3 is from urban or infrastructure led, right? So again, that importance of monsoon as their income diversifies also goes down over time. So we have to look at, well, monsoon is important, right? The SNE, we have had deficient rainfalls which impacted growth, but it's there. It's important factor, but it's not the only factor deciding, rural. And we talked about liquidity, etc. If liquidity improves, even rural gets benefited on that, right? And we have seen on the monsoon side, obviously everyone talks about monsoon on a very broad level. Monsoon acha tha, but there is geospatial differences and there may be flooding in one region which is not good.
This is where averages are misleading.
Yeah.
So monsoon is good, lekin large parts of India may not have
Distribution.
Yeah,
of
distribution.
monsoons,
Yeah. So we have to look at that as well from the monsoon. So not the headline number per se.
Okay. Chanchal, if I see in general over the last maybe couple of years, definitely, maybe slightly longer also, per se, consumption sector as a whole, I'm not talking about specific stocks might have done well. Consumption sector as a whole has not done that well in terms of stock price growth, right? And one of the reasons was the starting valuations were too high. What makes you believe that, let's say, the next 12, 18, 24 months will be different, where stock prices will do well? Okay, and especially again, given the fact that there were so many challenges which we just spoke about in the last 6-8 months, which have happened, some of them will take time to improve.
Sure.
So the reason for, or the case for bullishness in consumption sector, how will you make it?
So personally, I would disagree. Consumption sector India में अच्छा नहीं किया है. If I pick up, कुछ stock ने अच्छा नहीं किया होगा. Rather, there are a lot of discretionary stock. Multiple stocks would have done well. In fact, my Birla Gen Next fund would have given us 17% CAGR for last 10 years.
Okay.
With
No, I was slightly more near term. The last 2
last 2 साल अच्छा नहीं किया.
Not 10 years, last 2 or 3.
Okay.
But even that is very low. It's not very, we can't say that it's a large disappointment versus the broader index.
Okay.
If you look at, I dissect till maybe September of 24, Chanchal will always answer, but we have seen only the Nifty FMCG actually not doing so well.
Yeah.
The rest of the stocks, like you look at Nifty consumption, real estate, auto, retail, travel you spoke about in detail. That's have done a reasonably.
So consumption theme अच्छा किया. What happened only FMCG and FMCG क्योंकि consumption का बड़ा part हो जाता है. Stocks में लोग देखते हैं लीवर अच्छा नहीं किया.
Look at this.
तो कुछ FMCG stocks अच्छे नहीं किए. तो largest FMCG कंपनी ने अच्छा नहीं किया. तो लोगों को लगता है कि FMCG stock अच्छा नहीं किया. But overall देखोगे consumption theme is much bigger than FMCG also. And with quick commerce, of course, people will look at different brands. Same brands अच्छा नहीं करेंगे. Companies will keep evolving, and one has to be very fast to evolve. So there are a lot of D2C brands which have evolved. So I think consumption theme India के लिए last एक साल थोड़ा सा slow down था, जब हमने discuss किया urban और rural slow down था. बट अगले 18 से 20 में ना बहुत तेजी हो सकती है इस थीम में. बट पॉइंट है वॉलेट से शिफ्ट होगा. जैसे मैंने बताया, प्रोडक्ट से सर्विसेज में शिफ्ट होगा, एफएमसीजी से रिटेल में शिफ्ट होगा, D2C ब्रांड नए नए आएंगे. सो वी हैव टू बी वेरी एजाइल, and that's where both of us try and do and invest and identify new stories where the new buck will be made. बड़ा पैसा कहाँ बनेगा, कौन से मैनेजमेंट डायनेमिक है, अपने आप को चेंज कर पा रहे हैं. बट कंजम्पशन थीम तो जस्ट चालू हो रहा है. I mean, per capita income तो हम बस स्टार्ट ही कर.
So this was you gave me a good prompt. This was one of my tracks. Let me then bring it up. There was this. So there was this, and I was with couple of other fund managers and CIOs, and there was this lot of talk about how new age companies are getting created, and which is such a fabulous story in itself. Maybe we'll do with some startup founder, we'll do one of our podcast series and we'll talk more about it. And a lot of these companies were actually sitting in the private sector so far. They were funded by venture capital funds or they were funded by private equity funds, and some of them have started hitting the public market. And I'm sure you guys are also investing in some of them. Whether you talk about platform companies, whether you talk about new trends like renewable, maybe it's not part of consumption, but it's a new trend. A lot of renewable companies are hitting the market. Electric vehicles, some have hit. There are a lot more in the pipeline. And if I talk about the IPO slate, which is there for the next maybe 1 year, 2 years even, it's predominantly new age companies, right? Some of them have become really, really big. Do you think these are just story companies? Because many of them till today we know are not making profits, right? there is revenue growth, but there is no profit growth. Or these are genuine sustainable businesses which have been built, with a caveat, and this is slightly a devil's advocate question, because my personal answer is these are genuine sustainable businesses, so I'm playing slightly a devil's advocate. You spoke about platform delivery companies. The underlying manufacturer who is supplying to these companies, from where the final delivery is happening to the customer like me, the manufacturers are not growing, barely single digits they are growing, but these platform companies are growing 50%, 100%, some of them smaller ones 200, 300% also they are growing. Do you think this is a sustainable story which is being built, or this is again some kind of a hype? We have seen it 1.5, 2 years back when there was a big correction in startup valuations, right? So what is your view on this? No, you take. Okay. You take.
I think Chanchal should start because he mentioned the platform first.
It's a very good question and interesting. So क्या हो रहा है? In simple words, distribution channels are getting realigned. So just yesterday, the distribution channel was traditional kirana store, etc. But today, the distribution channel is quick commerce platform. So आपने बोला प्रोडक्ट कंपनी में ग्रोथ नहीं आ रही, लीवर इसमें, बट ये चैनल रियलाइन हो, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन रियलाइन हो, तो इसलिए इसमें ग्रोथ आ रही है. देन टू लुक एट कि इसमें प्रॉफिट नहीं आ रहा है, इज अ वेरी, इट्स लाइक टिपिकल लोग जो बात करते हैं प्रॉफिट नहीं आ रहा, पैसा कहाँ बन रहा है मार्केट में, वैल्यूएशन क्यों, ऐसा नहीं देखते. यू हैव टू लुक एट यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स. इसका यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स क्या है? ये पर डिलीवरी कितना पैसा बना रहा है और पर डिलीवरी कितना पैसा बना सकता है. If you look at unit economics, you will find, wow, what a model they've created. I mean, the future was, we never thought that the traditional kirana store will be disrupted. We never thought that the modern retail evolving in India will get disrupted fast. But their unit economics is fabulous, and they've been, the entire quick commerce platform, if I sum up all the company put together, has been built in less than 10,000 crore cash burn, period. And they today, one of the quick commerce companies in Nifty 50 is already there in the index. And these companies were created maybe जब हम आप बात करते थे last 10-12 साल में created.
10 years.
The point is that they are getting it's a new age. Things are getting disrupted. And Indians, I mean, again मैं वापस इस बात में 28 साल की एज है, हम लोग आजकल कंपनी इंडिया में बना के, and these companies will rule the world. I mean, we'll create product for the world. We'll supply things to the world, and I'm very sure we have to find these new ideas, and these new ideas will create a lot of wealth.
Yeah,
want to add something?
I think the key.
He's very bullish on these.
Yeah.
So I have to check his portfolio, which are these companies, and buy these stocks.
So I think the keyword is business model, right? So there will be companies which are sustainable, which are profitable. They may have burnt cash in the past, but if the business model and the execution by the promoter/management is good, they will continue to be sustainable and profitable in the long run. I think Chanchal talked about QC, right? So they've been gaining market share, as you talked about. Their growth is many times more than the manufacturers because they are taking market share in the distribution space. And it's they're coming off a low base, etc. If we just take a step back in like internationally, you look at Amazon when it started in US, right? So wafer thin margins, but amazing cash flows. I mean, it had so much cash flows, and finally it went. Amazon Cloud was actually formulated somewhere in 2000s, right? And then it's become a second engine and the third engine. So
and the primary engine now.
Yeah, primary engine now. Yeah. So I think because cash flows were good, they were growing every year despite wafer thin margins in Amazon US and maybe international as well. They've been able to sustain and grow different business models, etc. Here also, if companies generate cash flows, we just look at P&L, wow, they're wafer thin margins, but if they continue to generate cash, they will be sustainable and profitable in the long run. It may be QC, it may be any other, you talked about renewable or any other platform.
EV?
Yeah.
Big theme.
So, and another just point, everyone in general, we tend to overestimate any trend in the near term, but underestimate in the long run. So,
very good point.
It settles at food delivery. We had similar questions.
Do you think, as the market stands today, which is slightly oligopolistic, very few players taking away almost the entire market, do you think that changing? Because it takes that initial amount of capital burn, which not everyone will burn, not everyone will get to burn. So do you think there will be more players, this will become slightly more competitive, or do you think this will be
quick commerce
oligopolistic? Any, because see, I think I'll tell you the trigger for my question, which is that this 10,000 crore or whatever be that amount which is being burnt in any of these sectors, not many people will get that money from the venture community to burn. And the people who are getting, not all of them will succeed.
Yeah.
So there is a big survivorship bias. Now the people who have kind of passed that entire test of baptism and are there now in the market listed, their products, brands are known. Do you think there will be that next guy who's going to challenge these guys? Do you think it will become slightly, because more competition is better for consumers, better for the economy eventually?
Yeah.
Do you think that is going to happen, or it will remain more concentrated?
I think, see, you talked about capital, right? So capital is one lever, one moat maybe. But second is execution as well. If most of the companies in a particular space do not do well and the market is there to be captured, someone else will come definitely to capture that market. We have time and again seen companies have come from behind and taken a very reasonable market share. This has happened in China. For example, we talked about the largest e-com company which got listed in 2012 or 2013. Now we have seen like other companies like Pinduoduo coming and giving a good fight to Alibaba, right, in the Chinese market. They also came from behind and gave a good fight. So it depends on capital, which is one factor, but management, execution, coming out with the right business models, right offering to customers is very, very important for that.
So, some of these things we used to learn during our MBA days, which is that first mover advantage. Actually, there's this thing of a late mover advantage also, that all that had to be solved in the ecosystem has been solved now. For example, if I talk about quick commerce, since we are talking about it, there is now a reasonable big ecosystem of riders available.
Yeah.
Right? So if there is a decent business model someone can promote, उसको ये नहीं होगा कि to create this concept of how to get riders.
Rider
ecosystem is there. You just have to give them a good proposition and you can tap into it.
But the point which he mentioned was very interesting point. Capital के basis पे ही चीज नहीं होती. आज two-wheeler space में, there are traditional two-wheeler space. नए EV space पे जो आप बात कर रहे थे, there are new companies evolving.
Yeah.
It's about execution. It's about how fast they're able to execute the idea, how fast they're able to understand the unit economics, how fast they're able to crack that, and that's where so young guys, thought leaders in this industry will create wealth. We have seen quick commerce में नए बंदे आकर they are not sleeping. उन्होंने नया platform, third नया platform, so they are evolving as we speak, right? And only execution is most important.
Also is very
dynamic.
Infant.
Yeah.
No, it's infant.
And dynamic also, because it's infant, it's dynamic. Any infant is
dynamic. Yeah, they'll jump, they'll bump, they'll bump into something.
Yeah.
They'll get hurt, but that's how they will learn.
Yeah.
So no,
Indians adopt things very fast.
No, I really do hope as a participant in the economy, as a participant in capital markets, and also as a consumer, that there is more competition, because then it benefits everyone. But again, as you rightly said, it's very fast.
Food delivery में globally हर country में देखो उठा के 2 या 3.
Yeah, there is
difficult for.
And capital is not the only thing. So you look at some of the companies which raised capital in 2014-15, although mainstream and couple of them are no longer there, right? So
2-3 लोग ही बड़े बन पाए.
Okay, good. Okay, so last question to you, as a fund manager focusing largely, although I know your funds are slightly diversified, but let's say if I talk specifically about focusing on one sector, do you prefer diversification within the sector, or do you prefer more concentrated portfolio approach?
I believe we started a discussion when valuations are high, so it's always better to have a diversified approach because of the higher valuations.
Is it dependent on market conditions, or is there some strong philosophy you follow? Personally, I'm saying.
No, personally, I believe a basket of stock always helps. So I try to maintain a tail of the stocks, and I believe the basket of, and within consumption also there are India में 65% of GDP is consumption, and consumption बहुत बड़ा theme है. It's not just FMCG. FMCG
typically people equate it to FMCG.
No, actually, you're right. When I was saying that the sector has not performed well, I was thinking FMCG. Forgetting that in some sense, mortgage is also consumption. Auto is also consumption.
Banking also, it's big.
So I think some of the best performing sector last 3 years have been auto, real estate, hospitals, all these sectors just consumption.
थीम बहुत अच्छा है. इस थीम में वोलेटिलिटी कम है और लॉन्ग टर्म में बड़ा पैसा बन सकता है. इंडिया की एज के हिसाब से, इंडिया की जीडीपी कंस्ट्रक्ट के हिसाब से, दिस इज अ वेरी गुड थीम फ्रॉम लॉन्गर टर्म पर्सपेक्टिव. एंड ये थीम में क्या है, कोई नया आदमी म्यूचुअल फंड में आना चाहता है, वोलेटिलिटी कम चाहिए, उसको रिटर्न चाहिए, तो सस्टेन के हिसाब से बहुत अच्छा थीम है. एंड इंडिया का जो कंस्ट्रक्ट है जो जीडीपी का, तो उस हिसाब से भी अच्छा थीम है. आप
So Hitesh, this is something which we help our clients and customers a lot. But let's say since we are chatting and you both are from very, very large fund houses,
Yeah.
For an average customer, investor, whether a new investor or who has been investing for some time, for the next month, that incremental money which is there, which they have to put, this question always comes that kahan invest karu? Okay, and we try and help in whatever manner we can, but still that question remains. So let's say that customer, that investor is coming to you and to your company, which is Axis Mutual Fund. How would you like to take this question that I have this extra surplus for next month, this month? Where should I invest?
So I think I'll talk abroad, like, right,
Broad.
and any incremental or money which comes to you, person can directly invest in stock market. For example, we are equity persons, so we'll talk about equity, but they can invest in directly into stock market, which is good. But if a person is spending day in and day out time in going through earnings releases, listening to calls, looking at macro trends.
Is it directly stock market? You said buying directly stocks.
Yeah.
Oh,
but,
no.
Yeah.
What?
No, I'm just,
This-
I'm just,
I-
no,
I
say
have
option
done
person.
I'm just, yeah.
Option and action.
I'm just,
It's not a
yeah.
direct issue.
Yeah,
You
I'm just,
mentioned, but I am telling you, I have been such a strong votary against this.
Yeah, so I'm just,
That is what you are
yeah,
saying.
so I'm saying ki at each mutual funds, we have a team of research analysts, we have experienced fund managers. Our day in
this only day in
and day on day out. So for him,
So I would hire
Yeah.
you to do it. Why would I do it?
yeah, so that's why. So first of all, why mutual funds, right? Mutual funds are because we do this day in and day out. That is point number one. That is the top fund. The second is for any right mutual fund. There is no right or wrong answer here, right? So every mutual fund has a different philosophy. Some are value, some are growth, some are diversified, some are concentrated, some are like diversified according to portfolios. So I think any investor should sort of align themselves with where they are and diversify accordingly. For a for a unit holder, diversification for himself is very, very important. He has to look at his own risk and return expectations, right? You cannot be 100% in one single fund type. You have to diversify again. As Chanchal rightly talked about diversification, so is to look at that. There is no right or wrong answer that one should select A fund versus a B fund. He has to align himself to that based on his risk and reward perspective and the fund policy. Market will reward value at one point of time, will reward growth at one point of time, will reward diversified like us at one point of time. But on a long run, it typically equates at a point of time. So that's my philosophy there, that there's no right or wrong answer. Person has to sort of do his research there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and this I tell all the investors that I interact with, or friends or family, whoever choose to take my opinion. अपना टेम्परेचर पता होना चाहिए और उसके हिसाब से दवाई लेनी चाहिए मार्केट का टेम्परेचर तो कुछ भी हो सकता है सो व्हाट इज फिटिंग योर
गुड एनेक्डोट
no it's true and so
Exactly, yeah.
what is fitting your risk appetite and I'll just give you an example. Okay, since I follow and track market a little bit, I invest in thematic funds at times, but knowing fully well these can be hugely volatile. Let's take defense as an example. If I go 6 months back, the 1 year return was almost like 100%. The money doubled in 1 year. From there till now, it has gone down by 35%. Whereas headline index has gone down by 15-16%. So I made some money, I lost a lot also. And for a 10% decline, it has to go up by 11% for my capital to come back. So I am okay with that volatility, and hence I can choose to be. Are you okay with that volatility? Then you be there. If you're not okay, a simple index fund in most cases solves most of your problems, right? And I have been and India specifically, if I talk about, there's still a lot of alpha to be made. So there is a very, very strong case of active management, and this discussion which happens all the time between passive and active, actually there's no discussion. You can choose
right or wrong.
We are so under-invested fundamentally as a country that right now both options are okay. There is so much alpha which will be made over the next 10 years, 20 years, that you can just fill it, shut it, forget it. In most of the cases, it will work very well. So I think we are at the fag end of our discussion. It was an interesting discussion. We covered a wide variety of topics. Very quickly, maybe to finish off. Although, Chanchal, you briefly mentioned about how you see the sector doing. In general, this kind of bearishness? Maybe Hitesh, you can go first. Chanchal gets slightly more excited, so I will keep him for the last. This sentiment of bearishness, do you think it's now kind of plateaued and things are looking better from here on?
Yeah, I think in select sectors, just to be, we have seen valuations coming off.
Yeah.
Where in some cases, I'll talk about consumption in select FMCG. Chanchal talked about QSR. We've seen they coming, below 5-year, 10-year averages. So I think from a valuation perspective,
Makes sense to get in.
there are certain pockets which continue, which look attractive at this point of time. And Chanchal talked about, and we all talk about travel, leisure, which continues to be structural. Like maybe themes like pharma hospitals. Again, hospitals is a big theme. I remember, on the listed space, we had a few hospitals, maybe 6-7 years back. Now we have a whole plethora of hospitals as a space, right? Hospitality, we've seen a lot of hotels getting listed, right? So I think there is enough and more. There are structural stories which play in from a valuation perspective. There are other basket which continues to look attractive, and I think our job as a fund manager is to identify both of them and deliver returns to unit holders, right?
Very nice catching
Thank
up
you.
with both of you.
Great.
Thanks for coming down. Hope you liked our little office.
Thanks for calling us.
It was our pleasure.
Yeah.
Good meeting you after long.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.